Collective, it's rotten, was Gary Breen's damning assessment of Arsenal. And that's not just Arsenal now, that's Arsenal over the last period of time. Ben Turner says, this is spot on. If you disagree, that's fine. But my word, you are deluded if you think otherwise. Club is rotten to the core. Lack of ambition from the top and desire on the pitch. Press the reset button. Richard Grant. According to the fanboys, it's not Xhaka or Ozil. It's either the coach, tactics, or they don't have the correct players around them. Superstars will always shine regardless of the situation. And the Divine Beard says, fantastic summary of the mess at Arsenal are in. Great interview, spot on. I said it, all those players Wenger brought in his last days were shit and thought big about themselves because Wenger considered them good. I love Ozil, but let's move on and let's play the under-21s and call it a season. Is there any way back for Arsenal? Kenny Cunningham is with us this morning. Kenny, good morning to you.
Morning, lads.
Is there any way back for Arsenal from here? Are they just destined to be in irrelevance for the next half decade or decades?
Oh no, I don't think it's their destiny to be in the doldrums for the next kind of 5 to 6 years. But yeah, it kind of needs kind of fundamental change. We can talk about up in the boardroom level, etc., how that functions. But I think primarily in the short term is the appointment of a new manager at all football clubs. Really, to point out the obvious, it's absolutely key. You know, have to get the right man in who can immediately assess the issues within the squad, around the squad, the kind of culture that Gary spoke about. I agree with totally, but that can change, and that can change fundamentally from the manager. His kind of the type of personality that you bring in, his kind of work ethic, what he demands from the players, and in a reasonably short period of time, albeit with a number of players moving out the door and a number coming in. That can change reasonably quickly over the course of a year, 18 months, 2 years.
You can see that at various clubs where a manager comes in and has that type of impact, but there aren't that many of those managers around in world football. Carlo Ancelotti's been named, linked with this one fairly regularly. Mikel Arteta has been linked as well. With Ancelotti, you know what you're going to get. You're going to get the manager who has built teams at big clubs in the past, but I don't know if he's going to be the type of manager who's going to completely revolutionise how a club thinks about itself, given that he is not there for a 10-year period. He's not there indefinitely. He's literally there for a short period of time to try and get something done. Is that what they need, or is it actually somebody who's going to plug in and know the tea lady and know the training ground staff and get in completely invested in how the youth teams are playing, all that kind of stuff that a manager like Mikel Arteta is supposed to be?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting question. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Ancelotti, and I think he ticks quite a number of boxes just in terms of like Premiership experience, and I think his man management is always something which stands out with Ancelotti. Players have worked underneath him, got a great relationship with his players, a man of kind of real stature. You would have thought the type of personality, strong enough personality as well, to have those serious conversations with people further up the chain at Arsenal in terms of what needs to be done in terms of recruitment, in particular how the club functions on a boardroom level, but in particular his own experience in terms of recruitment of players. Now I know he's always operated at a very high level, which I think is a fair argument, predominantly during the course of his career. The level of footballers he was having to deal with, wasn't having to motivate too many the players on a daily basis that he had in a number of his clubs, which he's been at, the kind of likes of AC Milan and Chelsea in particular, and his previous work. So this is slightly different what he would experience at Arsenal. But I think as long as he got the right kind of backroom staff around him, he's worked consistently with a number of people over the years. I still do genuinely feel somebody like him of his kind of stature. He wouldn't go around shouting and screaming around the dressing room and pinning people up against the dressing room wall saying that's not good enough and demanding more in that respect. He goes about his business in a slightly different way. But I think the fact that he hasn't come into a situation at Arsenal before, how bad things are within the dressing room, the kind of work that needs to be done, I think there's an element of risk to that, taking Ancelotti in, as opposed to maybe Mikel Arteta, a very young manager, very energised, very driven, very demanding. But then you look at Arteta and say, would he get the type of reaction from the players, potentially in the dressing room, that somebody of the stature of Ancelotti would? So there's no given. It's as simple as that, lads, in terms of who you bring in. But for me, it's still a massive decision, the manager, and if you can get that right, for me, things can change very quickly. As I said, over the next kind of 12 to 24 months.
Kenny, do you think they do need a fire and brimstone manager? one that will go in and absolutely read the riot act and tell these players exactly what he does think of them. I'm not sure they got that from Unai Emery. I'm not sure Freddie Ljungberg, with someone of his stature in the club or a lack of experience as a top-level manager, is able to do that either. Wenger certainly wasn't that type of manager. Maybe they just do need to change the script, even if it's only on a short-term basis. I'm not talking about Paolo Di Canio himself, for example, but I just remember what he did when he was brought in by Sunderland for that short space of time. Maybe what Duncan Ferguson has done, lit a fire underneath those Everton players over the last 2 weeks or so. Somebody of that ilk that can come in, really shake it up, even if you don't necessarily have any intention of having them there for the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, but surely the intention, Dave, has to bring, at the moment, has to be to bring somebody in and to keep him there for the course of the next 2 to 5 years. It can't be short term. I understand if the manager that they want isn't available, may not be available till the summer, then I can understand the thinking, right, he's going to come in a very short period of time and have an impact. But even then, Dave, the type of manager you're talking about, very few managers manage like that now in the modern game. Even you look at the very successful managers, look at the top of the Premiership and work your way all down. Very, very difficult for managers to operate in that environment now, to treat players like that. Players just don't accept it. Players are different now than they were 10, 15, 20 years ago. And managers, I think, have had to modify their approach in terms of how they deal with players. And managers have spoken about that. The great managers, Mourinho, I remember listening to as well not too long ago, in terms of how you treat players, how you deal with them. So I take your point in terms of what you're saying, but you go into a dressing room, you start shouting and screaming. Very quickly in the modern game now, half the dressing room is going to switch off. They're not going to listen. They're actually not going to accept it off you. And that's the reality of the situation in modern football. And the only thing that you've got to change then as a manager, you've got to recognise that the way I used to manage over a longer period, it can't work in the modern game. And particularly in that Arsenal dressing room, I'm not too sure it'd work. Although what I would say, I know there's a lot of doom and gloom around Arsenal, but some outstanding young talent in that Arsenal dressing room. There is something to work with if a manager comes in terms of the next couple of years. The likes of Martinelli, Saka, I'm a big fan as well. Willock, Reece Nelson as well, hasn't got a huge amount of game time at the moment. So there is real talent there. But no, I think short term is only if that man, once they locate the man that they want and he ticks all the boxes, think, yeah, he's the one potential for us going forward, medium to long term. If for any reason they can't get him, they have to wait till the summer, they have to be a little bit patient, then yes, maybe someone in the very short term. But generally speaking, for me, they've got to be looking to get the right man in now as quickly as possible.
It's so difficult to know exactly what the right man is. If you look at the template for managers who could have been successful and who've got a good CV, you go all the way back to AVB coming over and you're like, oh, this guy actually looks like he's got the perfect CV. This should be fine. So what's going to be the definition of the right man for Arsenal? Like what are they looking for? The one kind of characteristic that's going to stand out. You go, yeah, okay, this is exactly what this club needs at the moment.
Yeah, well, that's a good question. It's a good question because I'd make an argument. Yeah, everybody else would look at that Arsenal team and say what they've been lacking the last couple of years in terms of that team needs organisation in terms of the tactical setup of the team, particularly from a defensive point of view. Now, you could argue, have they brought in the level of players, defensive players that they should have done, particularly in centre half and maybe centre midfield areas like that. Have they got the players of the calibre that they need to have that kind of defensive resilience to keep the number of clean sheets that they need to be successful? Probably not. But in terms of the actual organisation team that's there, could they do it better? Could they be a little bit more compact, a bit more secure, out possession of football, more difficult to be, keeping more clean sheets, conceding less goals? Yes, I think they could. So that's what I'd say. First of all, get the team set up. Can you get someone who's a good coach, understands the game, and who can actually get the team set up better defensively without losing necessarily that attacking flair which they have? And the interesting thing is that doesn't actually have to come from the manager, Jared. The actual manager that we're talking about actually doesn't necessarily have to have some of those outstanding attributes, because if you're talking about a manager, maybe someone like an Ancelotti, say, great personality, great presence, man management, players brilliant, players love and really want to play with him, can pull the whole dressing room kind of club together in that respect. Club will rally behind them. But then you look at him in the training pitch and say, you know what, he's actually not particularly great. He actually doesn't enjoy the coach. He actually doesn't do the coaching.
Yeah. What
are you going to do then? What the good managers do then? They go get the best coaches around. This is what I'm talking about. They go and get a group of 2 or 3 people around, first team coaches, whatever you want to call them, and they're brilliant. They're brilliant in terms of the tactical setup of the team, and you delegate that responsibility to those other people. So pretty much it's not necessarily just all about the manager himself. Doesn't have to have all of those attributes that we're talking about. But as long as the whole management setup has those qualities that I'm talking about, then hopefully you're onto a bit of a winner. So that's the thing. Obviously, don't get too caught up in terms of blinkered in terms of the manager having to tick every single box in terms of all of those things.
Kenny, I want to talk about Manchester City before we ask you about Man United. Is this them back now? Is there like a freedom that the league is gone, that they can start playing good football? Because that's 45 minutes of devastating football to win the game yesterday, where their best players are all now playing well at the same time. Yeah,
could have been a huge surprise, really, Jerry, in terms of that performance. I mean, generally that's the type of performance they've been churning out for a long period of time. Haven't seen on a week-to-week kind of basis this season. That's why there's such a gulf between them and Liverpool at the moment. But they're always capable. And you always feel as if they're at some point the motor's going to click in again. They're going to find themselves and run 5, 6, 7 wins on the bounce. So it wasn't a huge surprise. The tactical changes which he made for the game. I mean, De Bruyne really played as a 10. I mean, really played a 4-4-2 really for most of the game. De Bruyne just operating off Jesus, and that's something which Arsenal couldn't do with the Arsenal midfield too. Yesterday, Torreira and Guendouzi were talking about Arsenal tactical setup, etc., etc. But that, De Bruyne operating those little pockets, just drifting in behind, receiving the ball into those areas, they found it very difficult to deal with. But you're right, the focus looked right, concentration levels, they're moving the ball very quickly. They're looking back to reasonably close to their best of what we've been used to. So no huge surprise. But I think they need to keep it going. Need to find that consistency now to their play, because although I wouldn't envisage that they're going to catch Liverpool this season, in terms of the Champions League, which has to be now their focus going into the second half of the season, they're going to have to find a little bit of form, momentum, that little bit of self-confidence, that little bit of a strut to their play, which they've had previously, if they want ambitions to win that competition, which I think they have a very good chance of doing.
Let's face it, this was against an absolutely shambolic Arsenal team that are now without a result at home in 6 league games, which is the first time that has happened.
That hasn't stopped City. That hasn't stopped the City team wetting the bed already this season, though. No,
my point is you can't say that this means City are back. Well, their central defensive pair yesterday was Nicolas Otamendi and Fernandinho.
But if De Bruyne has confidence and he's back playing well, then the team is transformed.
But they'll concede a load of goals. That is the biggest problem they have at the moment. They do look so vulnerable. And to say that there was a marked improvement yesterday, offensively, absolutely, but it's against Arsenal. Like, they're up against one of the worst teams in the division as things stand. For City to go there and win 3-0, I mean, that does not raise an eyebrow.
You're right, Jared, in terms of the won't change. You spoke about it, Jared, I think last week, in terms of Manchester City not being out of possession of the ball, not getting around the pitches quickly, in terms of that press, being a little bit too passive, opposition teams having too much, have more time on the ball, etc. It was interesting still that Foden gave him a little bit more legs in the team yesterday, so that would have been a help. And even the fact they kind of reverted back to a midfield to a kind of defensive shield of Rodri and Gundogan as a midfield too. For me, that gives a little bit more protection to that kind of weakness, which we all know Jez alluded to there, in the centre of the defence. Far easier to protect that area of the pitch when you have two sitters operating in that half of the pitch. That allows you to play with an orthodox 10, which clearly De Bruyne, they've got a couple of players who can play that position as well. So although I'd agree with you, Jen, in terms of the fundamentals haven't changed for Manchester from a defensive point of view, just the fact they've got a little bit more dynamism, a bit more legs in the team with Foden coming in, and just that little tweak in midfield with that kind of defensive two, as opposed to that one pivot, usually Rodri, and the two offensive midfielders, just gives them a little bit more legs and maybe just a little bit more defensive security that they had previously.
Well, okay, I want to talk quickly about Manchester United. A 1-1 draw against Duncan Ferguson's Everton. This is kind of how Manchester United's season has been, with the big results against the really good teams and then struggling against the supposedly inferior teams. Is that just a product of the inconsistency that's going to be there while the manager learns his trade and while some of those younger players learn exactly what the rigours of a Premier League season involve?
No, I think with Manchester United, I think what you've alluded to there, Jeff, for me, is the deficiencies in the central area of the team, which have kind of been there now for some time, and it's always going to be an issue going forward. The big Pogba question as well comes into it as well. because when Manchester United, the success that we've seen of late and under Solskjaer, when they play like maybe counter-attacking game, sit deep, soak under pressure, Manchester City was a great example, then break quickly and efficiently. That was best epitomised against City. It was absolutely brilliant. I really enjoyed the performance. But the two centre midfielders that day, McTominay and Fred, have played very well, but what did they do? Got around the pitch, made tackles, got tight to people, cut off the pass and lanes, track runners, done all of those things from a defensive point of view. Brilliant, absolutely. Now flip it around a week later, Everton at home, take the initiative, take control of the game, start dictating from that central area of the pitch. You can't really look at McTominay and Fred and expect them to do that in terms of their quality, technical ability, range of pass, and playing in the kind of tight areas. So that's the problem Manchester United have for me. That's the biggest thing. The type of player they can introduce into that central area of the pitch. You can actually do both of those things. That's an easy thing to say, I know. But I think that's the problems which they have. Likes of Everton, different other teams that come to Manchester United, maybe sit into a certain extent, put up those banks of 4-5, wherever it is, and say, right, what have you got? Look to that Manchester United centre midfield and say, right, we actually will give you the ball. Are you good enough to break us down? Actually, can you dribble through us with the ball, or is your passing good enough they can actually play around us and find people in the pockets or space in behind? And to be fair to McTominay, Fred, as well, they've done recently, I don't think they're those type of players. So that's the problem for Manchester United going forward, targeting those players. Is Paul Pogba going to be one of those players? If he is, great, put him in the team. If he's in the right headset, if he's totally committed to the football club and he wants to commit himself there to short to medium term, brilliant. For me, Pogba is still the player you build a team around. If not, get him out the door, get the money in quick, and go and buy some top-class centre midfield players. Easily said and done, I understand that, but that's where the problem is in terms of the criticism that you've levelled against Manchester United at the moment. That's where most of it is for me anyway.
Kenny, there's obviously issues at the back as well, because more often than not, they're not scoring enough to be able to withstand the concession of a goal, and that was the case yesterday. They only conceded once, albeit there was a bit of controversy to it, but that's 11 Premier League games now without a clean sheet. It's quite incredible that any club could go that long without keeping out the opposition. What do you see from them defensively that is the biggest issue for them at the moment? Because if they tighten that up, well, then one goal would be enough.
Yeah, I take your point. No, it's not ideal. I can't see any huge weaknesses there. Certainly across the defensive line. I like the fullbacks in terms of Luke Shaw's come back after injury. Wan-Bissaka is developing, getting better and better. Jez, so I think he'll certainly improve. He's someone I really enjoy watching playing. I think it's a really solid central defensive pairing. Has Maguire improved that defensive solidity? Yes, I think he has. Am I the greatest fan of Maguire? No, I'm not, because he's a fantastic ball-playing centre-half, kind of reads the game very well, dominates in both penalty box in terms of heading ability. But for me, still, in terms of athleticism, his mobility, there's still a question mark there. You're talking about Manchester United getting on the front foot, dominating possession. Well, to do that, you're generally pushing towards the halfway line. Your back four are operating within 10 yards of the halfway line, sending your full-backs high up the pitch. And that's when I get a little bit uneasy when I look at United, when Maguire's getting pulled into full-back positions, having to defend in 1v1 situations against counter-attacking teams. Now, I'm not saying, point the finger at him and saying he's the problem, but if you're asking me in terms of potential, any kind of weakness there, I still look at Maguire, think potentially counter-attack, athleticism maybe there. Could you argue in terms of a better quality centre-half to play alongside him? Are there better centre-halves out there? I think possibly are. I'd make an argument there's a Manchester United centre-half playing in Italy at the moment who potentially is a better defender than Lindelof. I got a lot of criticism for that over the past couple of years. But in terms of the actual game itself around Europe, are there better centre-halves who could come in like great athletes, physically imposing, quick over the ground, who maybe could better complement Maguire? Yes, I think there are, but you're going to have to spend big money, maybe 70 to 100 million pounds on the likes of Koulibaly, players like this who could come in and improve that defensive line. So is that the key area for Manchester United where they need to improve at the moment? Now, for me, it's centre midfield. It's all about centre midfield for me. But if you have the money to spend, then money is no object. And there seems to be at times that with Manchester United, money is no object. For me, that left-sided centre-half position, Jared, if you're talking about where could you improve that Manchester United defensive line, it's that left-sided centre-half position.
Kenny, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us.
Cheers, lads.
Kenny Cunningham giving us his thoughts there.